What's up everybody, back with some more PTR raid testing, and today we're taking a look at Mythic Remnant of Ner'zhul in the new raid Sanctum of Domination. Now keep in mind this is not a guide on how to do the fight, and I will mostly focus on the Mythic part of this encounter. What's new on Mythic, how and if that changes the overall approach to the fight, and my thoughts on the overall encounter. Now if you want to see more of the mechanics, you can check out my heroic video of this fight. So what's new in the slap him so hard his armor comes off fight on Mythic? Well, the aforementioned armor that you slap off now slaps back, meaning anytime an armor piece is removed from Ner'zhul, it will duplicate one of his abilities. And the knockback from all of his abilities, but most noticeably the Malevolence, is greatly increased, much to our surprise. And the Malevolence part changes how you deal with this encounter completely, at least movement wise. There's a lot of it. So previously it was fine to be in the center of the room while the cursed Malevolence player was out on the ledge for the dispel. Now you get knocked back over more than half the platform when it goes off. So we tried a few things here, but what seemed to be the easiest for most of the fight was to just have free camps near the ledge of the platform. So you had first Malevolence be all the way out on the ledge, raid behind them, and next Malevolence behind the raid. So when you dispelled the first Malevolence, everyone got knocked across the platform, and the position you landed in meant that the next Malevolence player was almost already in position for his dispel, and you get knocked back from there. Now this can and will overlap with Spite Swirls on the ground, Grasp of Malice, Suffering on tanks, so it really does change up the entire movement. But let's move on to his fancy armor, starting off with the Helm of Suffering, which will duplicate Suffering. So let's go through that a bit. Now for the Helm of Suffering, apart from the soon to be mentioned Mythic part, one thing has been changed for the tank mechanic. Previously Ner'zhul cast Blight and then Suffering. Blight has been completely removed on all difficulty, and Ner'zhul as well as his helmet only cast Suffering now. Lots of Suffering. So when you slapped his helmet off, it will move around the platform, and when Ner'zhul casts Suffering, so will the helmet. So you get a line going from boss to the targeted tank, as well as a line going from the helmet to the tank. So players will have to keep an eye on the helmet position as well as the boss, or rather the line between them and the tank, to ensure they don't get hit by it. However, the targeted tank can also use this to hit multiple orbs of torments to debuff them if the boss is in a bad position due to the numerous knockbacks during this encounter. Now for the Gauntlet of Malice, whenever the boss casts Grasp of Malice, which is the 3 cones going across the room, the Gauntlet will cast this as well, and depending on where the Gauntlet has crawled to, it can be quite bothersome. For example, a lot of the time when we were doing the Malevolence dispels and getting knocked around, the second dispel would happen at the same time as Grasp of Malice, and it seemed like you can bait Grasp of Malice so that one of the cones will always target the largest clump of players or a player. But seeing as everyone is kinda stacked up since you're dealing with Malevolence, it was always on top of us, so when we dispelled, we got knocked into a safe spot. However, if the Gauntlet has crawled over there, well, you're gonna have a bad time. So effectively it just decreases the amount of safe space you have during Grasp of Malice. And lastly we have the Rattle Cage of Agony. Great name. The Rattle Cage duplicates Cast of Malevolence. We never got around to try that, but it should be 4 Malevolence now instead of 2. Keep in mind that Malevolence duration is decreased based on number of target. So first gets 21, second 18, third I assume 15, and then 12. Which would mean on top of having a lot of them to deal with, you're now under a lot more time pressure to do so, which will greatly increase the difficulty of some of the overlaps, as you can't just wait them out anymore. That being said, this part has been removed from the dungeon journal, but was still active while testing. So, as usual with PTR, I'm unsure how that's gonna be in the end. On top of this, anytime you dispel Malevolence, that player should drop a pool of lingering Malevolence on the ground. This was not active during testing, but was still in the journal, so again, unsure. Now if the pool is there or not won't change how you approach it too much. It just means you'll rotate around the platform with every set of dispels, but it will make the fight a lot more punishing, as you'll gradually get less and less space to dodge on if you mess up a dispel. By being in the wrong position, you risk getting knocked into a pool, and they hurt like hell on heroic, so it's safe to assume they'd hurt even more on mythic. And lastly, not really a mythic mechanic, but they also changed how the orbs of torment works. Previously, when you picked one up, you got a stacking slow. That's no longer the case, it's now a 50% slow that doesn't stack. So guess they didn't want poor shamans and DKs to be on orb duty for the entire entire fight. Now it just makes more sense to have the non-active tank doing it, so after a tank swap, go throw an orb. And that's pretty much it for this fight on Mythic. With the risk of sounding like a broken record, I really enjoyed this fight and how it changed on Mythic. The increase on the knockback from Malevolence really is the big mechanic here, as it completely changed how you have to deal with it, as well as its interaction with other mechanics. And overall the fight seemed well tuned, very engaging for DPS and healers as well as tanks, because there was a lot us poor tanks had to do with the aiming suffering, running orbs, positioning boss, etc., instead of just the random taunt on X stacks and be done with it. Overall, that's a reoccurring theme in the raid for tanks. Huge fan, make me do more. And yeah, like I said, that's pretty much it. We'll cover all bosses on PTR and proper guides will be out once the raid is released. On top of this, I'm streaming all of the raid testing on PTR, so don't forget to check that out whenever there's raid testing announced. Otherwise, I'm streaming all of our main progression once it's live on Mondays and Tuesdays. If you have any questions at all about this encounter, hit me up in the comments or become a patron and get access to the Stankie Discord where you can get help with anything raiding related. Don't forget the usual stuff, like, comment, subscribe, and ring that notification bell. Thanks for watching, and I will see you next time.